I'm gonna sew up a jumper today. Hi, I'm Megan. Welcome to my sewing space. In today's video, I'm going to be using Simplicity pattern 7108 in view B to sew myself up a corduroy jumper. And the fabric I'm using is this beautiful golden yellow, my favorite color, corduroy. And I have known the entire time that I've had this fabric that I wanted to make a jumper style dress. I'm really excited to get this sewn up today. This is a very nostalgic pattern for me because I used to wear dresses like this all the time as a preteen. I specifically remember having a dark blue and a forest green, and I wore both of them every week to school. 6th grade specifically. Super excited. Let's get right into this. First up, I'm using my tape measure to figure out where the bottom hem of this jumper is going to fall, and it is about 4 inches longer than where I want it to land. So I'm going to take 4 inches off of the pattern pieces. Cut out my pattern pieces. And here's what they look like all cut out. Some thoughts. 1, I got too hot and I changed my shirt. 2, it is a good thing that I took a full 4 inches off of this jumper. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had enough fabric. I really had to be careful lining up my pieces. There were a couple spots on the fabric that I was trying to avoid or position in a way that they'll be hidden in the seam allowance because they just look a little worn down. There is one area that I wasn't able to avoid. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had enough fabric, but I kind of like the wear and tear look. It kind of gives it a cool kind of distressed look that I'm not hating. I'm just gonna finish my iced coffee here, take a little bit of a break before I get into sewing this jumper together. I'm going to swap out my regular machine needle for a heavy duty needle because this fabric is pretty thick. And then I'm serging the bottom edges of my facings and any seams that are going to be exposed once this jumper is fully constructed. First up, right sides together, I am pinning and sewing the 2 front panel pieces together. Press that seam open and get to work on the pockets. I'm pressing under 1/4 inch of the upper edge and then turning that upper edge outside along the fold line to form a facing. And then using a 5/8 seam allowance, I'm stitching all the way along the raw edge. And then trimming that raw edge down to 1/4 inch. I turn the pocket facing back to the inside, give a little press, and then I'm clipping the curves of the pocket, and then using that line of stitching along the raw edge, I'm turning under the raw edge and pressing. Next, I'll stitch the facing close to the inner edge. And then on the outside of my front jumper piece, I am pinning the pockets in place. And then stitching them close to the edges at the sides and the lower edge. This project called for interfacing on the facings, which I'm choosing not to use as this fabric is already pretty heavy. So I'm going right into pinning the front facing to the front bodice, right sides together. And then stitching the side, armhole, and upper edges. Then I'm trimming the seam down and clipping all of my curves. And then I turn the facing to the inside. I use my crochet hook to help push my seams out nice and flat. And then I give everything a good press. And then I am hand sewing the facing to the inner seam to keep it from turning to the outside. We're gonna work on the vent extensions, and I'm turning under 1/4 inch of the vent extension and then sewing those in place. Next, pinning the 2 back panels right sides together, and then using a water erasable marker, I am drawing my seam allowance down onto the vent. And then I am using a basting stitch from the lower edge of the fabric to that large dot, and then switching back to a regular length stitch. I'm sewing the rest of the length of the back panels. Then starting about 1 inch above the large dot, stitch along the seam line to the large dot, pivot, and then stitch across the upper end of the vent extension. Here's what that looks like. Then I'm clipping just the right side of this corner to the large dot. Then I'm pressing open the back seam and then pressing the vent extension toward the left. Then I'm basting the upper end of the vent extension in place along this line of stitching. Then on the outside, I'm going to sew right across this row of basting. Now I'm going to remove all the exposed basting stitches from that line that I just sewed, along with the basting stitches that are holding the vent closed. Next, I'm going to work on the button tabs, which this pattern is calling an underlap. I'm folding the button tabs in half lengthwise with right sides together, then stitching across the end with the small dot. Then I'm turning the button tab right side out, giving a good press. Then I'm going to baste the raw edges shut. Next, on the outside of the back bodice, I'm pinning the button tabs to the side seams and basting in place. Next, with right sides together, I'm pinning the back facing to the back panel and stitching in place. Trimming down the seams again and clipping my curves and corners, turning the facing to the inside, giving a good press, and again sewing the facing to the center seam. Next, I'm opening out the facings at the side seams, and then with right sides together, I'm pinning the front and the back panels at the side seams, matching my dots, and having my raw edges even at the lower edge. And then I'm stitching the side seams from the lower edge all the way to the dots already marked on the fabric, and then pressing those seams open. I've been at it for several hours and I'm starting to lose my light. So I am going to pick this up tomorrow. New day, let's finish this dress up. I am taking the front facing and the button tab toward the front so the seam on the button tab lines up with the front edge. Then I'm stitching across the lower end of the front facing and the button tab. And then here is what that looks like. Next, I'm going to top stitch a 1/4 inch from the edge on the front and back panels. All right, here are the buttons I chose. We're going to get into sewing my buttonholes. I'm just gonna put some liquid stitch on my buttonholes and let them dry, and then cut those holes open. I need to sew on my buttons, and then I just need to hem the bottom, and then I'm all done with this dress. And then I like to use this glue on buttonholes because it helps keep the fabric from fraying. And then once that's dry, I use my seam ripper to open those holes up. And then I'm sewing on my buttons. Last thing to do is the bottom hem. I'm pressing up a 1/4 inch. And then pressing up an inch again. Pinning and sewing in place. And I decided to do 2 lines of stitches on my bottom hem about 2 millimeters apart for a nice double line of stitching. And that's it, finished jumper complete. What do you guys think? I'm pretty happy with how this jumper turned out. Do I love it? I really like it a lot. I think that I will wear this quite often. It's cute and casual, which I like. I think it would look really, really cool with a black turtleneck. I don't have a black turtleneck. Gives me an excuse to go thrifting. It matches my yellow and cream hexagon cardigan that I made earlier this year super well. I am pleasantly surprised at how well it matches that cardigan. I feel like I should have graded between sizes. I probably could have done a size small for the top half of this project. I think I definitely needed to stick with a medium for my hip area. It almost falls off my shoulders. I'm not gonna go back and fix it now. It is what it is. It's good. I'm happy with it. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!